Before I begin, a viewer attached this forum to my Reddit community, and I'm reading the trip report that was inside of that forum. The original question asked was, Huffing, is it dangerous and safest substance to huff? And then they continued with, well, first off, I'd like to say that I nor my friend will be huffing anything except the oxygen around us, but I am very curious as to the health dangers and actual effects of huffing certain substances. First, is huffing something really as dangerous as they say, and what are the effects that can be achieved from this? This trip report is in response to this question. When I was 14, my cousin, who is now literally a living dead person, convinced me that what made huffing dangerous was when people ingested the chemicals, as he so ignorantly put it, and that the air was safe. He claimed everyone says huffing is bad because they do it wrong. He proceeded to fill a plastic bag with a propellant room deodorizer, and then when it was full, he dumped out the liquid which had pooled at the bottom. He claimed most people leave it in the bag or shoot the shit directly into their mouth through a shirt or rag. Then he took it all in one inhale and then exhaled after holding it. His eyes glazed over, muscles in his face twitched randomly, and then finally he started drooling on himself. He kinda came to around 10 minutes later raving about how much he just tripped balls. He claimed that he felt great, and that his method of making huffing safe by dumping out liquid and not breathing it back into the bag to keep inhaling it had kept him and his friends perfectly healthy. After my experience though, I'm sure he knew he was lying to me. Unfortunately, I was much less drug savvy at the time and assumed that my cousin knew something most people didn't know about a drug class that I knew nothing about. I tried his method. I don't know how I felt, I just know I really liked it. I remember doing it with him for the rest of the day until the can was dead empty. I remember believing that I enjoyed the effects, even though the only effect was blacking out and waking up face down in drool with a bag in your fist. I never remembered one single second of the high. The only part I was conscious for was the suicidal headache and the night of vomiting that followed. After that, you'd think that I'd want to stop. I woke up the next morning and craved it horribly. This was made worse by my cousin saying that's normal for your first time. I told him I couldn't remember anything other than the few minutes between huffs and being sick when we ran out. He claimed this was normal. My memory is so fucked that I'm not sure how many days I huffed with him for, but I do know that after the second day I didn't get sick anymore. And even when I wasn't actively huffing, I felt intoxicated like I was drunk, but I was 100 times more stupid and forgetful than alcohol could ever make a person. At some point, my cousin started talking about how the best high is inhaling gasoline fumes, but that we should only do that just once as he did not have a fake method for making it safe. Now gasoline, I do remember what that felt like. We took the small half-empty spare gas tank from the garage and unscrewed the smaller cap on the back, then inhaled through the spout. I was still in a severe stupor and wanted my cousin to think I was cool, so I was the guinea pig. I took a lungful and exhaled. What happened next was nothing like inhaling propellant. It started at the base of my spine. A very warm and intensely pleasurable sensation slowly crept up, and it felt like as it passed each vertebrae, my whole body would vibrate more and more with warmth and intensity. It felt like it took a whole lifetime to reach my head, but when it did, I felt an explosion of warmth and rushing that washed over my whole body. Once I could register sight and sound again, I have no idea how long I was out of it for. The first thing I heard was a phone's busy signal extremely loud, which then faded as I shook my head and tried to figure out where I was. I saw my cousin slumped over the gas can on the floor and remembered the orgasmic rush I had just had and promptly stumbled giggling back to the can. The next X amount of days are completely blacked out. One major problem with using gas fumes to get high is that in 2 or 3 days of huffing, we still had the same amount of gas in the tank, so it was an endlessly reusable drug with the rush that one will never want to stop chasing. After no more than a week of huffing, I was a zombie whose only function was to keep breathing air filtered through that can. I must have remembered to drink some amount of water because I'm still alive, but I think the last time I ate was the morning after my first use. My parents were out of town for all of this, and my cousin and his mom had been ignoring each other for years. When I finally was dropped off at home, my parents immediately noticed that I was really fucked up on something. I claimed to be really drunk, which they believed, and after some yelling, I was finally allowed to pass out in my own bed after telling myself that it was no big deal, and I'll just go back to smoking weed and getting drunk for kicks, and it'll be fine. At 3 a.m. that morning, I woke up to throbbing pain in my head and eyes, extreme nausea but only dry retching, and even though I felt very sober, I couldn't focus my vision, and attempting to walk resulted in so much dizziness that once I got myself laying back down, I was dry retching again. This feeling was combined with crushing depression, and cravings brought me to the point where I probably would have tried to commit suicide at the worst of it, if only I could have walked 3 feet without being immobilized by pain and nausea. I laid in bed and cried for hours, honestly hoping that I would die soon because I was convinced that's what was happening. It took 3 days before I was able to get out of bed and be able to pretend I was better from drinking myself sick my first time trying liquor, which my parents still believe. It took a month for the headaches and pain behind my eyes to go away. I was severely depressed and considered suicide every day for the next year, only getting better after I eased myself back into smoking weed and spent months in therapy. And finally, I know, not think, but know that I did permanent brain damage. Inhalants are not drugs, and they do not get you high. The pleasurable effects I experienced were my brain's panicked endorphin responses to the neurotoxins that I was exposing it to. Inhalants make you feel high by doing brain and nerve damage. Even if you huff one time, the effects are irreversible. Huffing is getting high on brain damage. My cousin and I never truly spoke again, and we never will. His mother wrote off never leaving his room as typical teenage angst and assumed he never came out when she was home because he blamed her for his father walking out a year before. I tried to talk to him a few times over the next 2 months, but he never came to the door, and his mom had to start working a second job, so he was alone all day every day. I still blame myself for not telling my aunt to take him to the hospital the day that I realized he was still using when I couldn't get him to unlock his room door to let me in. I was already horribly depressed and I couldn't imagine how much worse his poisoning would be than mine was. I finally told my aunt that I thought he might be smoking crack, and she ended up calling 911 when she couldn't get any response whatsoever through the door. He was severely malnourished, like literally skin and bones. He was and is completely unable to speak or make coordinated movements. He never got better and never will, and the hardest part for me is that my aunt blames herself. If I had just fucking told my parents the truth the night I claimed to be extremely drunk, then they would have freaked out appropriately and my cousin might still have a life. I ruined my aunt's life also. Her son requires full-time care the way an infant would, only he never smiles, never laughs, and never cries. He just stares blankly. The part that truly makes me physically sick is that she is so grateful to me for my selfish lying. She thinks I saved her only son's life when the truth is that I could have saved him, but I was too much of a coward. That was 8 years ago and I still have horrible nightmares. I feel like his soul will haunt me my whole life. I have used a lot of actual drugs over those 8 years, and none of them are anything like huffing. Take it from me, as I have done both, you would be doing much less harm to yourself smoking crystal meth all day long than taking one single huff. It took me 3 hours to write this, and I did not do it for my own health. There is no such thing as a safest inhalant. They all create euphoric effects as a result of destroying the brain. I have to live with this horrible lie for the rest of my life. I am a grown man and I will break down into tears when I remember how I felt after being poisoned like that, and I imagine my cousin living in that hell or possibly something even more torturous. He was unable to speak or even go to the bathroom on his own. A prisoner inside his own mind, doomed to spend every second of his life he still has, praying for death. Wow, that was probably one of the most fucked up stories I've read on this channel. Please, don't do inhalants. They're so bad for you. If you haven't learned from this story or the other stories I have on my channel, nothing good comes from it. And like this guy said, even one huff can ruin your life. When it's safer to smoke meth, you know you have to avoid this shit. Also, I had to copy and paste the story into my own Google Drive document. The grammar and the structure of the sentences were so bad I had to fix it. It took me about 10 minutes just to fix it. He never capitalized an I except at the beginning of a paragraph, and he spelled a lot of things very wrong. So for some reason, if the story wasn't enough to make you avoid inhalants, maybe the way he wrote his story will. But if you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe if you're new. And also subscribe to my second channel where I'll be posting some random shit all the time. I just uploaded a video on my phenibut use. I was gonna do that on this channel, but I figured I wanted to go off the cuff with it, so I figured I would upload it to that second channel. Anyways, thank you all for your support, and have a wonderful day. I have never been a drug user. I drank once in a while and smoked pot years ago, back when I was a teen in high school a few times, and that's it. I'm 24 now, have a master's, and a well-paying full-time job. Yesterday I was walking through Washington Square Park, where I pass every day, and there are always people there looking to sell drugs. Not in the park anymore due to cameras, but it is well known you can meet a dealer and do the transaction elsewhere these days. They usually don't solicit drugs to you unless you stop to stand around near one of them or look like you're looking for something. Yesterday, I happened to stop by a row of benches to check some messages on my phone when a dealer on the bench to my right asked me if I need anything. My life has been pretty boring the last few years, and I feel like I haven't really lived, taken any risks, or done anything crazy, so I figured, what the hell, maybe I'll buy some pot. It's been a while. I said yeah, and after asking me several times if I'm a cop, he gave me his number and tells me to meet him at a fast food place several blocks away, and he will hook me up. I say alright and nervously check to make sure I have cash and go meet the shady looking dude. We sit down, and after hounding me asking me if I'm a cop, he asks what I need. I tell him I just want a dime bag, and he says something like, "Nah, sorry man, I only sell half ounces. You could take that, and I've got some coke and H." At this point, I didn't want to buy half an ounce of pot. I probably never smoked more than an eighth in my life, but then I started considering his last word, heroin. I've heard so much about it and how crazy addictive it is, and seen it in the movies and TV. I'm thinking The Wire here, one of my favorite shows, and it really started to intrigue me. I've always wondered what it would be like to do heroin. Out of nowhere, I say I'll take the H, and we do the deal there. I give him the cash under the table, and he slides me a small order of fries with the little stamped wax baggie in it. Then he tells me to let him leave first. I put it in my pocket, then nervously race home, my heart racing, cannot believe what I just did. I held on to the bag in my pocket, palms sweating the whole ride home. When I get home, I open the bag and dump some golden flakes and powder on my glass coffee table. At this point, I don't even know what to do. I know you can snort heroin, but it looked all flaky, so I try to remember how they did it in the movies, but they always seem to inject it in film, so I start Googling how to snort heroin, like an idiot, and do a little research on the stuff and how much to take. I used a card to get it into a fine powder and move a small bump to the side, which I inhaled through a dollar bill. I didn't feel anything yet, so I snorted a small line, which was essentially half the bag. There was very little inside. I waited, and in a few minutes, I had the most pleasurable feeling of pure relaxation and bliss wash over me. I just sat there, and everything felt amazing. I nodded off, and it was great. I had the TV on, but wasn't paying attention. I must have sat around for 4 hours doing nothing, but feel total pleasure. It was like a full-body orgasm times 10 that kept going on and on. When I would nod off, it felt like I was in a pure conscious, lucid, dreamlike state. Sometimes it felt like I was leaving my body. At this point, I did the rest of it and stayed up all night and must have been high for 10 hours straight. I might have slept at one point. It's hard to tell the difference when you nod off, and everything feels good regardless. Just the feeling of being under a blanket was amazing. I was blown away by the power of this drug and just how orgasmic it felt. I never understood why people did drugs before and got so hooked on them, but now I see why. I have the urge to do it again, but I will resist and not do it, at least not for a long time. I understand the addiction potential and how someone could easily tear apart their lives with this stuff. Heroin is pure powdered pleasure. I actually feel proud of myself for having the balls to do something this crazy, and I feel like it was a valuable life experience and my window into another world and part of society. I will never forget the day I did heroin. Now, ask me anything. Edit. Please no more comments telling me I'm going to be a homeless addict dying of an overdose now. Don't lecture me with all your misconceptions and lack of any real knowledge or experience about the drug. I understand if you know someone who's been hurt by it. We all do. Any drug can ruin lives. Please ask me questions instead of trying to lecture me, and do some research first before spewing lies. Update 2. I don't regret this at all, and I see a lot of talk about how cocaine isn't as bad as heroin, and people telling anyone considering trying a hard drug to do coke instead. I've known and seen a lot of heavy coke users, many who have become addicted and OD'd, and I find it disturbing that people think coke is acceptable because some higher class circles find it that way. I'm thinking the young Wall Street and college crowds here who associate it with money and being cool, and is easily manageable to use for recreation, while society tells them that heroin is for the poor and destitute and leads to automatic addiction and suffering. So I plan to try cocaine the next chance I get and compare the two in terms of effects and experience. Doing heroin was memorable and life-changing, and I know I can handle anything once. I've done my research on coke and know the risks, so if anyone has any questions or opinions on that matter, feel free to chime in. Whether it is to tell me I'm a fucking idiot or to give me advice, whatever. This is an experiment and an adventure in life. I'll report back once I try it. Wednesday night update. Fuck, I'm still withdrawing, throwing up and sweating out gallons of sweat. I really want to use and relapse right now. I know I shouldn't. These urges are so strong and overpowering. Please help me if you can before I get the chance to. 1,000 comment update. Fuck my life. I wish I was trolling and this was all some elaborate lie. I was doing everything right, have been clean, and somehow a rumor got out that I had been using, and my girlfriend found out, and she basically broke up with me last night, but is now putting that decision on hold. I have some serious unrelated business and work I need to attend to in 2 hours, and I don't know if I'll be in any state to be able to and be ready. I can't stop crying. Fuck heroin, fuck my life. I guess I don't need to say that since heroin pretty much fucked my life for me in under 2 weeks. I just want to die. NA update. Went to NA. I shared my story and it seemed to hit a lot of people. I cried, I got a lot of support and numbers, and feel like I'm in a good place, and truly believe I never have to use again. I will be going back. Update number whatever. I slept for about 30 hours, sweat out my entire body, and now I feel okay. I also took a shit for the first time in like a week, which was pretty awesome. I can stop this on my own. I don't even think I need NA, but I'm not ruling it out. I have no craving or desire to do heroin. I'm sure some of you will be quick to say I need real support, and maybe you're right, but right now, I think I'll be okay. New update. I appreciate all the genuine concern and advice. I finished my stash, bad idea but too late. Threw out my needles, and I'm too faded to respond to comments for now. When I sober up in a couple hours, I'll check out some NA meetings. Edit. I nodded off after taking another hit at 4 a.m. and couldn't be bothered to look at this anymore, and just woke up sore with a headache. For those of you who think I'm a troll because I can do heroin and type well with good grammar, fuck off. It's not that hard if you type slowly and carefully without looking at the screen. The screen is a blur and too bright, and it's challenging, but I would rather post coherently than like an idiot. I know it's hard to believe someone dumb enough to do heroin is intelligent in other regards. Comments disintegrated into mindless bandwagon accusations of being a troll. I wanted to engage in a discussion and know I need help and my mind isn't exactly right. I'll sift through the posts and respond to the genuine ones once I feel better. For people calling fake, is this enough proof for you? Do you want to see my track marks too? They're not pretty, and this is under 24 hours after first shooting up. I am not proud of any of this, and posted it here because I can't tell anyone in my life, and don't want to keep it to myself. I figured doing another IAMA would give me the opportunity to talk about my issues anonymously, and help realize the extent of my problem through feedback. The assholes saying this is all fake trolling can fuck themselves. People can post being prostitutes and all sorts of things that harm a large number of other people, but dismiss someone on the track to becoming an addict who needs help and just wants to talk and maybe help some other people from making the same mistakes. I appreciate the people giving legitimate advice and asking questions. I'm going to the next NA meeting I can find. I know there will be a lot of people telling me I told you so and urging me to seek help, and they are right. That's all good, and trust me, I know the danger I am in of ruining my life, but let's keep this an AMA first and foremost. I will be checking out an NA meeting this week, and I know I'm on a fast track to becoming an addict, and I want to stop before it gets out of control and I'm physically addicted. No one in my life can know about this, and I want to stop before it's too late. I have been using for 2 to 3 day periods, then taking a couple days off, then using again. The breaks were in part to try to not get hooked, and in part because I had an unreliable dealer who charged me more than double what I should be paying. I got ripped off several times when I tried to buy off the street. My former dealer is the guy who I first bought from. Today I met a guy through some internet channels who said he could get bundles, 10 small bags of heroin, for significantly less than half the price my old dealer gave me on his most fair deal. He also happened to be an IV user and had a stash of sealed needles and supplies and offered to shoot me up. I had kind of hoped I would find someone who would, and he was a pro finding small hidden veins and injecting a bag in one shot. To quote Trainspotting, take the best orgasm you've ever had, multiply by 1,000, and you're still nowhere near it. He gave me some new needles and tourniquets, and when I got home I tried to do it myself. After not hitting a vein countless times, I finally got a red flag and was good to go. I've injected 5 bags since 4 p.m., the last one a little less than an hour ago, and I'm tempted to do one more. Ask me anything. Forgive me for any delays if I nod off. These 2 posts truly show the dangers of getting into drugs like heroin. It can be very damaging to you and the people around you. Plus nowadays, it's most likely not heroin. It's probably fentanyl laced with xylazine too. You just gotta be careful with the choices you make. If something in your gut tells you not to do it, then don't do it. Just be safe out there, and don't be stupid. Here's an update from 3 years ago. This is not an AMA or anything exciting really. I saw a disturbing and sad post about an opiate OD on r/public freakout and was reminded to try to log in and check this. I guess it has been over 3 years since I have checked this or posted anything. I find this Reddit account pretty overwhelming. I'm just posting to let people know that I'm still alive, clean, and doing well. Thanks to everyone who has reached out in messages checking in over the past few years, and sorry if I can't get back to you. I have quite probably taken more nitrous, at least in whippet form, than anyone else alive, so I feel compelled to share with all of you my experience. Excessive nitrous oxide abuse can cause permanent, irreversible brain damage. I am patient 0, so please, everyone, listen to this all the way. If I had been fortunate enough to read what I am about to write 30 years ago, my life would be very, very different. I could just post the facts, but if you will walk with me through my life, you need never run the risk of having what happened to me happen to you. If you are a serious nitrous user, listening to this could help save your life. It's going to be quite long, but it is important to me to paint the whole picture. I also hope that it might prove entertaining, and some of you might recognize yourselves in the narrative. And those who feel a sympathy with my feelings, those who relate to my expression and understanding, those who think yes, yes, are the ones who need to listen to this the most, as you are in the greatest danger, or could be, if you are not careful. I am being honest about some stuff that I have hidden from others all my life. Some of it is quite embarrassing, but I choose to share the humorous aspect with you all. I can't be the only lunatic in this world. This is not an anti-nitrous post. This is information that has only recently become available. Personally, I wish our atmosphere was oxygen and nitrous oxide instead of oxygen and nitrogen. So without further ado, the tale begins in the dentist chair. I was 9 years old. I had never taken any drugs and was not looking to at the time. But I had a phobia about dental work, and the new dentist told me that he would give me laughing gas and it would remove my fear. So he attached the mask to my nose and told me to breathe normally. After about 20 seconds, I began to feel a tingle, quite pleasant, which was getting stronger with each passing second. The dentist asked me if I could feel the gas yet, and a drug addict was born. I told him no, I don't feel anything, so he turned it up. By now, I was really starting to feel amazing. It was fantastic. But it was more than just tingles and physical well-being. Even though I was only 9, I started seeing patterns in everything. A deeper connection, set of connections, a lattice that embraced reality, but which had a meaning, a message, beneath the surface, something important. The dentist asked me once more if I felt the gas. I told him that it was starting to take effect, but was not very strong, despite the fact that I could barely string the sentence together, as I wanted him to turn it up even more, which he did. The last thing I remember hearing was the dentist saying to the nurse, "This one likes to fly high." From that moment, I knew that I had to obtain nitrous oxide again at some point. I had imaginings of listening to music while feeling that way and how awesome it would be, and I was right, of course. It stuck there, in my memory, unforgettable. I was 9 and I no longer saw the universe the way that I had before. Jump ahead 11 years. I'm 20, and I found acid about 6 months earlier. I'm in Amsterdam, having left South Africa to avoid military service. I'm a musician and making a living playing street music. We're on acid all the time, taking larger and larger doses each time. It's classic. I'm the Messiah, and I'm going to save the world by turning everyone onto LSD. I'm Ken Casey. I'm Ram Dass. I'm Neil Cassidy driving the bus to the next acid test. I'm on a mission. I have found the ultimate truth, and I believe that I have the ability to express it. It's straight out of the electric Kool-Aid acid test. I'm the merry prankster, doing ever-increasing doses of LSD because I believe that there is a reality behind this one, and I'm going to evolve and become a transformed being, a metamorphosized, evolutionized, mental telepathical guru. I even have a following. There are 5 of us, and I'm the leader. I'm the fucking chosen one. This is why I'm alive. This is why I exist. I am the new Messiah. It's funny looking back on it now. A bit embarrassing. Okay, a lot. And I've never told anyone about this before. Like, who would admit this shit? But it's important to paint the whole picture. But LSD is not a beast to be tamed. Oh, I believed that I was in control of the acid, that I held the reins. I had become its master and its servant. But I was treating it disrespectfully, and when you do that, the acid inevitably turns around and slaps you down a peg or two. In my case, it was all the way down from my lofty delusions of grandeur to a smear on the roadside. A new acid had come out, called simply Mandala. The dealer told me that it was not commercial acid, a bit stronger, and to boot, a half a hit was a hole. I had been dropping between 5 and 10 at a time, and I did not assume that this half hit of new acid was going to top my multiple ingestions from the weeks before. But I learned that day that what I had been taking was not truly LSD, but a pale shadow of what real LSD is. All my research, all my dosing, nothing had prepared me for what happened. It was phenomenal acid. I had never seen such colors, and it warped dimensions that I did not recognize anything around me. It was too much for downtown Amsterdam, so we all jumped on a tram, laughing uncontrollably all the way home. Once home, it was even stronger, having really kicked in. I made a big hashish pipe and took a huge hit of really good Afghan hash. And then, I completely lost my mind. I had to reconstruct it all afterward with the help of my friends. There was a huge flash and reality had shattered, literally. It was as though everything I'd been seeing was made of glass, like a mirror, and the hashish exploded the acid so hard and fast that I suffered a psychotic break. More to the point, from one moment to the next I had total amnesia. I was with my closest friends, a girl who had come over to Europe with me who was like my sister. I had known them all for years, but I recognized no one. And I did not know who I was or where I was, and I don't mean which town, I mean which universe. I was a total blank, wiped clean, nothing left. I realized that I was bleeding. In my throat, it had turned to glass and shattered. Blood was everywhere and my life started slipping away. I collapsed slowly to the floor and died. However, a while later I appeared to be conscious. So this was it. I was dead. This must then be the afterlife. A man walked up to me and looked at me curiously and then said, "Are you okay?" But what I heard was, "Are you okay?" in a kind of deep Twilight Zone surrealism. Who was this person? If I was dead, perhaps he was me, a reflection of me, on the other side of the shattered mirror that was reality. So I said, "Who are you?" And he said to me, "You know who I am," which I heard in a big boomy voice as, "You know who I am." The poor guy, he didn't have a clue what was going on. None of them had actually realized yet that I had quite literally lost my mind, all of it. So I deduced that if he were me, a kind of afterlife version, that we would have the same mother as I. So in an attempt to confirm this, I asked him, "Who is your mother?" To which he replied, "You know who my mother is," which I heard as, "Okay, you get the picture." I treated LSD as though it was something that I actually had control over, that I was bigger than acid, that I was beyond a bad trip. I will end this part of the tale of this day here, but know that it took the rest of the day to reconstruct my basic ego, just knowing who and where I was. I still felt broken glass in my throat from where it had shattered when the mirror shattered. I could no longer sing. When I tried, I was overwhelmed by an abject terror and shut down. It was weeks before I could sing again, which I needed to do to survive, and I continued to have terrifying flashbacks for the next 6 months. This was the most phenomenally life-changing experience of my entire life. I was afraid to do acid. I had been so humbled, so beaten, so kicked in the teeth. Any normal person would have just said, "That's it, never again." But I could not do that. Live in fear the rest of my life, because I had experienced this overwhelming and incomprehensible annihilation of ego. I had to face my fear. I had to get back in the driver's seat. I had to understand what had happened in order to be whole again. And there was born a true and devout acid head for life, still going strong. I needed to understand myself, how my brain worked, and LSD was the tool that had both damaged and repaired me. The experience kind of put a crimp in my plan to save the world, as I realized that it was completely unethical to turn anyone on unless they were truly desired to be turned on. It was a full year before in midwinter, Christmas time in Konstanz, Germany, that I did my next truly superb LSD. Only this one was as soft as the other one had been hard. And finally, utterly high, I looked in the mirror and was no longer afraid. I finally had all of my mind back, and my fear was gone, but my respect has never faltered. And now, the long-awaited return to the topic of nitrous oxide. Who would have thought, who would have guessed that nitrous oxide, laughing gas, was used to make whipped cream? I found out from a young freakazoid heroin junkie in Germany that whippets were nitrous. Finally, the 9-year-old boy in me shouted in glee. I knew it. I knew I would find it again. And this time, I was going to really get to know it. I remember buying the whipped cream machine and a box of cartridges. I remember my total excitement, my fear of disappointment. What if he was wrong? I wound in the first cartridge, neglecting of course to add the cream. I hyperventilated for a minute, breathed all the way out, and inhaled the entire contents. Within 5 to 10 seconds, I recognized the feeling. My insides screamed in glee, and for the next minute my world was perfect. It was exactly as I had remembered it, only more so. This is my encapsulated life story, so I have to jump to pivotal moments if I'm going to keep your attention. Let's just say that over the course of the next year, I did hundreds of boxes of nitrous, maybe 1,000. And the more I explored the nitrous reality, the more sense it made of everything. I was starting to feel that I understood the intrinsic nature of the universe, not just in the sense of thoughts, but in perceptions, understandings. There were times, and I'm sure that most of you can relate, when I felt that for a moment I truly understood the universe as it really was, and it was so simple and funny, fucking hilarious. I would experience the moment and crack up laughing uncontrollably because I understood the core of the essence of God, the universe, matter, gravity, light, energy, and quanta. The profundity of Nitrous is fleeting, and after the epiphany it fades so quickly that one can't quite remember what it was that one was thinking and why it was so funny. This, I found to be the curse of Nitrous, to have this understanding, so plain and simple, even expressible in mere words, if I could find them, or once found if I could not lose them. How, I wondered, can we extend this experience? Make it come down slower so that it would be possible to bring back some of this universal intrinsic truth to the real world. On a beautiful summer's day of 1982, I discovered the chemical synergy that I have affectionately referred to for the last 30 years as GACID, as in gas and acid. And from that moment, my life changed almost as profoundly as the day I lost my mind, because it was the day that I found my answers, all of them. I had done some acid, not a lot, maybe half a hit. I was still very cautious after my annihilation a year earlier, and the theory was twofold. If I did nitrous right at the end of an acid trip, like 8 hours into it, when everything had resolved on the acidic level, perhaps A, the nitrous would boost the strength of the acid to give me a momentary high that was like 5 or 10 hits of really good acid, and B, that perhaps the acid would help to extend the duration of the nitrous and give me a little more time to try and bring back some of the deeper essence of the experience. I was extremely careful. I'd lost my mind once already, and I was not keen on a second round. My first hit was minuscule. There was a very slight shift in my perceptions. I took a little more and felt the nitrous very vaguely, but in a way like never before, and in a good way like I had never imagined. By the time I was on the last cartridge, I took the entire thing, and I experienced for the first time in my life the holy realm that is GACID. The world that is GACID is a story unto itself with so many facets. I'm not going to try and define any of the experiences right now, too much of a tangent. I became a student of GACID. I had found what was, at least for me, the key that unlocks the doors to everything, and more importantly, it was the most exquisite experience that can be. It is heaven to me, a perfect state of being, the thing that we all at the core wish to experience, even once. I had found the key, a gateway, a wormhole to what has for me become not so much a drug synergy as an actual place. I devoted my life to this faith of mine, and my quest was to bring back some of these truths, and to find a way to share them with others, which I did in fact accomplish. I have kind of built an environment that almost guarantees arriving at this place. There's technology involved, it's all very complicated. But this post is not about GACID, it's about nitrous and the risks. Over the next 12 years, I did GACID about 500 times, and we're talking full-blown 4-hour experiences with like 10 boxes of nitrous each time. It is my world, my reality, my guru, my God, and myself. I have no doubts, no hesitation, no lack of understanding, and it just got better all the time, as I learned to pilot this spaceship that I built over the course of those 12 years. I eventually left Europe and moved to Canada, got a new life and a new wife, and continued building and discovering. It was very hard at times, terribly lonely. From my perspective, I had found the answer, and what's more is I could pretty much prove it, and took a few select people on a trip around the universe, but it was so lonely. All I wanted to do was share what I had found, but very few people knew about nitrous back then. I began to get adamant about finding proof, finding a way to bring back something significant enough that would make people take me seriously. I knew that if I told this all to a shrink that I would be labeled as a schizophrenic with delusions of grandeur, but I knew that all a doubter had to do was come for a ride and see for himself. They would find their own truth, not mine. Everyone has their own truth. All I had found was the medium in which to fairly reliably produce a very specific experience, and to be able to return and continue the thought, anytime. I was frustrated. My wife was not too supportive of this, and I wanted her on my side. So I tried even harder to find some tangible evidence that the work that I was doing was valid. Telepathy, psychokinesis, some small evolutionary step that would demonstrate that what I was doing was valid, and that I was not just another nutter who did too many psychedelics. This was the time that I had almost completed my spaceship. It was an entire room, with a driver's seat positioned in the middle. There were spinning wheels and stroboscopic lights, all synchronized to music. My own, of course, which was rated specifically to induce certain types of trance using light and sound to guide the subject on a solid path. I was so close, but relations were getting strained with my wife, who thought that I was obsessed. She was right, of course. I was, and why not? This was the most important thing in my life. It was the one thing in which I truly had unshakable faith. I had to find some evidence of the validity. I needed support on this, not criticism. I at least deserved a chance to demonstrate it to someone else, to have the years that I had invested validated by another fearless soul who was willing to walk through the gates of heaven and be embraced lovingly by the universe. And now, we start to approach the moment of truth, the point, the reason that I have written everything that came before now. I am a scientist, not just a druggie. I don't just take drugs, I study them, I prepare myself, I am informed, I know the risks, I am careful. But this was before the internet. The only knowledge that existed was in books, and almost no one knew practically anything about nitrous. It had just slipped by, owing to the fact that it was legal, and a secret known by not a lot of people back then. According to Peter Stafford's psychedelic encyclopedia at the time, nitrous oxide was a perfectly safe drug. There were two, and only two dangers. The first rule was, don't breathe directly from a tank, you can freeze your lungs. And the second rule was, don't tie a mask to your face, because if you fall unconscious, you will eventually die from lack of oxygen. That was it. Other than that, it was safe. They give it to kids for fuck's sake. I don't know exactly when it went from genuine psychoscientific spiritual research to addiction, but it was marked by the fact that I started doing nitrous without doing acid. I know myself. I'm an obsessive, raging fucking maniac when it comes to drugs. I have no breaks. So I made a deal with myself many years before, after doing way too much nitrous for way too long and having spent a small fortune on it, that I would only do nitrous if I had done acid. I tried to keep it to once a month, but not always. I kept it at least to once a week, but I was so intent on finding my proof quickly that I made an exception, just once, then again, and again, and again. I really couldn't afford it, and I knew my wife would be pissed at me for wasting money, so I kept it to myself. After all, I was almost there. 12 years of exploration and design was finally going to come to fruition. I almost understood it all. I was so close, and the nitrous would run out, and I would go to the store and get more, and then be racked with guilt over it. And suddenly, I realized that I was addicted to nitrous oxide. They had said nothing about addiction in the books, but I had been doing it every day for about 6 weeks, maybe more, and I had been doing it excessively before it became daily. And when it ran out, I just could not cope. This was not a drug withdrawal like an opiate. This was madness incarnate. I could not stand being in my body. It was blindingly intense and wouldn't go away. The next weeks are only a vague memory with scattered images and vague recollections. I could not afford to keep taking the nitrous, but I could not survive stopping. I wanted to call out for help, but who the fuck would I talk to? There was no internet. Very few people knew about the recreational legality of nitrous. I felt so stupid. How do I even begin to explain to someone that I inhaled the whipped cream charges? They'd probably lock me up. So I had to stretch the nitrous I had, breathe very, very little in between, hold my breath for minutes at a time, not breathe as much as possible. I was losing it. I knew that. I was starting to go crazy, even by my own standards. And those of you who have actually listened this far can probably understand that I'm a rather bizarre individual. I don't remember much of the last weeks. I felt like I was dying, slowly. My thoughts were scrambled. There were dark patches in my consciousness. At one point, I thought I might have been possessed. I had gone from what I considered to be a self-respecting scientist of the wackiest of varieties to a fucking loony. I was lost. I was doing a gig on Vancouver Island, sitting on the beach doing nitrous all day long in tiny little gasps. The first night I noticed that I'd lost the feeling in the tips of my fingers on my right hand. The next day, my left hand. By the time I got home, my hands and feet were numb. 2 days later, my entire body had no sensation, and I had completely lost my motor control. Then I was in the hospital, and the year that followed never became cemented in memory. People, please pay attention. This is not a well-known fact. Not a lot of people have screwed up quite as badly as I did, and it's never been made public in a big way. The effect of nitrous oxide is cumulative. If I remove the mental and psychological and emotional horror that followed, I'll tell you that the physical sensations finally returned, as did my motor control. But the problem is that I had damaged my brain, and the signals that should have just reported to my cerebellum that I was in fact alive and moving were mistranslated by my brain as pain signals. In short, when my feeling returned, I was in unbearable pain, everywhere, non-stop, every freaking day of my life for the last 14 years. I nearly committed suicide so many times, not because of depression or sadness, but because I simply could not imagine waking up every day to this, suffering, and nothing to be done about it, because it is not physical as such, it's neuropathic pain, and it did not heal, and there is no treatment. I have spent 14 years wishing to God that the internet had been around just a little earlier, because once it arrived, I had found another person who had done what I had done, and who had suffered identical damage. I only found this 2 years after the fact. I could describe my suffering over the last 14 years, but I hope that I have successfully illustrated my point through this post. Nitrous is amazing. Acid is everything that I've said it is times a million. There was nothing wrong with my perceptions, only my obsession and total lack of self-restraint. I had my cake and I was eating it, and I could have continued to privy to what I consider to be the best chemically induced experience that there is. I found heaven, and I was such a glutton that I destroyed it through my greed. I still believe absolutely in nitrous, and particularly acid. It is simply the best. Nothing is better, not even love. I am almost done. There are so many aspects of the story that I left out, because we're talking 15 odd years, hundreds, maybe thousands of cases of nitrous, and about 750 hits of acid. All I wanted to do was share it with someone else. I have told only a handful of people about this, and I have never told the whole story at once. If even one of you is listening to this, ran the risk of making my mistake, and if this post at some future point helps to prevent that eventuality from becoming a reality, then exposing myself in this way will have been worth it. Please, friends, be careful. If you ever find heaven, take care of it. First of all, I will say that huffing gasoline was the most exciting, crazy, weird and best drug I'd ever done in my life. So far, I'm only 21. I've done ecstasy. It was wonderful. I did acid. It didn't work at all, no matter who I bought it from or how much I took. I never saw anything or tripped. It just felt like I was on a sailboat rocking back and forth. I've done weed, crystal meth, cocaine, and even crack. I did some shit that was supposed to put me into a so-called rabbit hole, but it never happened. Guess that was some fake shit. Demerol is good, only in the drip form. First experience. I am hanging with my female friend at our friend's house. Our two guy friends had left for a while, then came back. When they came back, they were laughing all over us, reeking of gasoline. We were like, what in the hell? We said, what the hell is wrong with you? And why the hell do you smell like gas? They started laughing, saying, ha, we've been huffing gas, man. We thought that was retarded. We had never heard of getting high off of gasoline. Didn't even know that we could. They end up taking us down the road and doing it also, even though we thought it was superficial. We get to this huge parked 18-wheeler with a rig on it. We're on our way out in the boondocks, aka the country. And it's nighttime with nothing but one deserted road and woods all around us. The two guys tell us to huff off of this gas tank opening on the big rig, so we do. When I did it, all of a sudden, my body starts feeling all tingly and warm inside. After a couple of minutes, the two guys started saying that there were aliens watching them and talking to them from in the woods nearby. My friend and I laughed and thought it was funny. Then they dared me and her to take 10 hits off of it in a row, or huffs, so I did. After doing 10 in a row, I blacked out. In my head, I had died, and all of a sudden, I became a comma in a biblical sentence. I was gonna remain as this as a punishment from God for the rest of eternity. Pretty crazy, huh? Then I started coming back to consciousness. I saw a black and white image in front of me of some old baseball player getting ready to swing his bat. Then I came to more and realized I was sitting on the ground with my arms wrapped around this person's leg, but it was just one of the guys bending over huffing off the gas tank. Experience 2. This is hard to put into words, but me and the same girlfriend were huffing. We were at this house that was vacant. We had the gas can sitting on the porch. We were leaning over, taking turns huffing it. At one point, my friend was leaning over, huffing off the gas can. I was really fucked up watching her. When she came up, she all of a sudden looked like a blow-up doll. It's like she was deflated, leaning over huffing, then inflated as she leaned or straightened upright. And when she was all the way blown up, this is so damn funny, all this birthday cake splattered on me, and all of a sudden, it was my birthday, and her and her sister, who was not there, had planned a surprise birthday party for me. All the trees and shrubs around us had these little lights at the base of them, and I was screaming for joy. "Oh my god, how did you all do this? This is so cool!" And my friend is all messed up too, doesn't even know what I'm talking about. All she does is just look at me and laugh, doesn't say anything, which keeps me going. Then some man comes out of his house from across the street and is like, "Excuse me, are you guys okay?" And me and my friend start stumbling off and saying, "Yeah, we're fine." And he asked something about us drinking, I think, but I can't remember for sure. We had been screaming and yelling, all excited over God knows what. Experience 3. This one is really hard to explain. Me and the same friend are huffing on the same porch at the same vacant house at night again. A ways into it, the gas turns into this cartoon-looking thing. I wish I could draw a picture because I can't describe it. It was almost like the gas can nozzle had turned into this dark red trumpet that it was talking to me out of. It started hopping around in the spot where it was sitting on the porch. It was as if I had been living this fairy tale story, and all of a sudden it brought me out of it to tell me what I was doing wrong in the story. My life. It was trying to tell me something very important. Then my friend turned into an angel, and had been secretly watching me throughout my life, and also sat with me on the porch to tell me what I was doing wrong in my life. I can't remember what the hell was said, but it freaked me out. Experience 4. This was around the beginning of me doing this also. I was at my house. It was only me and my mom. My dad had his boat parked out by the side of the house. There was a big gas can hooked to the motor. I was out there huffing it. At the time, my mom didn't know I did this, so when she came out there, she didn't quite understand why I was so fucked up. Well, she couldn't stop me. I was young and dumb. I was doing this in front of my mom thinking she wouldn't stop me. I had a piece of candy in my mouth when I started. Eventually, when I got really messed up, she came outside and started saying something to me. I started yelling back. I was so messed up that I didn't realize there was a piece of candy in my mouth and thought it was my tongue that had came loose. It didn't disturb me very much. I just grabbed it out of my mouth and threw it on the ground. That was weird. Experience 5. I was outside by the boat again. This time, no one was at home but me. I was huffing, and all of a sudden, the telephone pole at the corner end of my yard started talking to me. It didn't have a mouth. It was talking to me telepathically. It was placing thoughts into the subconscious part of my brain that I wouldn't know about or wouldn't come about until later on in life. Crazy shit. And the tree right in front of me, a crepe myrtle, was telling the telephone pole, no mouth, but telepathically, that is not allowed. You're not allowed to do that to someone. Some ancient rule or something. Anyways, I was looking down the street. I started hearing these noises of cars riding over a metal bridge. Then I started hearing these sounds of a man saying, "A silver tolled across the bridge." And what was happening is the street adjacent to mine had turned into a toll bridge. I had to pay a silver dollar to cross the bridge. I could hear people putting the coin in the slot and driving over it. I could even see the top bridge rails. I think that's what it was. Weird.
Experience 6. I had a gas can and was chilling in my backyard. My backyard has a lot of trees and shrubbery, by the way. No one was home. I was lying out in the sun in my bathing suit. I was underneath the shade of a small sweet gum maple tree. I think that's the name. Huffing. I had the cordless phone out there too, so every once in a while I was huffing, I would accidentally hit the on button on the phone with my leg without realizing it. The operator would come on, and instead of it saying, "We're sorry, if you'd like to make a call," I would hear it as, "O.R. Lee," then something something. Anyways, at one point, this frog hopped in front of me from behind me. Yes, it was a real toad. But in my head, I believed that I was some kind of witch and that the frog had come from me. I had created this frog and set it out into the wild. Experience 7. I was huffing gas with this girl I had met down the road that was into it too. It was a sunny day. We were huffing it out of a gas can. This was a gas can that had a tube that I could pull out of it. Well, I didn't know that this one was like that. So we were huffing, and I got pretty fucked up, again as usual. And I didn't realize it, but I began sucking the gasoline up through the tube thing and taking gulps of the gasoline. The girl I was with started slapping me on the back saying, "What the hell are you doing? You're drinking that shit?" And she took the gas can from me. I looked at her all funny. She had told me and was like, "Why'd you take my flower juice?" And a few moments later, I came to and realized what I had done. I even remember drinking it, even though I didn't know what I was drinking at the time. There were these little white flowers all around us at the time, which would explain the flower juice thing. So we stopped. I don't know how much I had ingested, but it was at least 2 gulps. I don't know how I didn't die. I wonder how much I would have to drink to die. But in the next couple of hours, each time I burped, I tasted that damn gas. It made me want to throw up, which I probably should have. So one of our friends picked us up, and they stopped by a gas station. I decided to get some cream soda, maybe put something in my stomach that would take away the taste when I burped. Well, wrong idea. It did nothing but make me burp more and made it taste even worse. End of it all. What caused me to pretty much stop doing this is the sounds that I started hearing that weren't really there. I began to hear this low buzzing noise. It sounded like it was coming from the power lines above my head. I know it sounds crazy. Then what actually scared me out of doing it is this bamming noise. I kept hearing this noise in the distance. I couldn't place where it was coming from exactly. It sounded as if someone had a sledgehammer and was pounding on the side of a building that had aluminum siding. It didn't bother me when it first started, but the more I huffed, it got louder and sounded more closer, even though I couldn't pinpoint where it was. Finally, it dawned on me one day when I was kind of sober, and it almost made me piss my pants. There's a saying, "You will hear me knocking at your door," something like that. Well, that really got me to quit. I really believe that after a year and a half of huffing gasoline, God was knocking at my door. He was warning me. The sound of the knocking, which as months passed, became a gradually louder bamming sound. I couldn't have fun when I was huffing. The sound was so loud, it overtook all the hallucinations I would have normally. It came to the point where I really began to believe something was coming after me. I had no idea what it was, but it was creepy. I'd start huffing, and there it was, again, even louder and closer sounding this time. Whatever it was going to get me, and I consciously knew this, so I quit. After a month or two, I realized that what it was, what I truly believe, was death knocking at my door, getting closer and closer. What happened to me about 3 months after I'd completely stopped huffing gas and doing any kind of drug was unexpected. I first began to not sleep. I felt like I didn't even need to. I started to become delusional, exactly like a schizophrenic. I believe people I knew very well were actually undercover detectives watching every move I made. I can't go into all the details, but mainly I thought I was psychic and knew these things, and all the colors meant something, and so forth. I ended up going in the hospital. I got better after a week of being in there and got out. Didn't do any kind of drugs or anything. Yet I became even worse, and not only becoming even more delusional, but began hallucinating, seeing and hearing things that weren't really there. So I went into the hospital again. I was then committed from that hospital to an institute for about 6 months. I did get better after the first month or two of being in there. I got out and have been fine ever since in that aspect. I even did other drugs and stuff, did not huff anything, and was fine. It's almost unexplained by the psychiatrist I've been to. It's the fact that I had quit huffing and did not do any other drug for about 3 months. Then all of a sudden, my brain decided to turn on me. I finally quit doing drugs and just stuck to drinking. It's been like that now for a few years. Now, I am a manic depressive. I will pretty much have to be on antidepressants for the rest of my life, and antidepressants don't even really do shit. They barely motivate me to get up out of bed and live life. I also have an anger problem now that has caused me to go to jail a few times and pay hefty fines. I can't handle stress like a normal person. My stress turns into anxiety, and anxiety into anxiety attacks. For the past 2 years, I've been having chest pains in this one spot on the left side of my chest that I'm gonna probably need to get checked out when I eventually get a job and insurance again. I get ridiculously scared sometimes when I'm by myself. I get these brief feelings that someone is in the house with me. Therefore, I cannot live by myself. If my boyfriend isn't here one night, I have to get a friend or something to stay with me. Then I'm okay. My psychiatrist has said that the main cause of my problems is from the gasoline chemicals that I put into my body and brain. That screwed up the chemicals inside me, more than likely, for life.
Dose, 2 grams of benzitamine. I start with the lights on low, 50%, pink-red blend. 5 minutes in, I'm feeling nausea already, hair standing on end. Last time it took 50 minutes, literally 10 times as long to take effect. This is extremely unusual, which adds to the anxiety caused by the benzie. 10 minutes in, feeling tingles on my cheeks and neck. I'm already feeling a dry throat. Things are definitely moving way too fast. I can tell my pupils are dilating. The room is getting visibly brighter. I'm seeing the classic tracers and star-like specks now. A wave of benzie-induced anxiety hits me like a semi-truck. The fear is powerful, but not overpowering. I think I can cope. I spin my eyes in circles to clear my peripheral vision of horrors when it gets too much. I feel hot and cold flashes throughout my body. My hearing seems like it's cranked to the highest sensitivity, and my vision is starting to sort of swing a little, even when I'm not moving my eyes. The effects subside a bit just for a few seconds, like the valley between waves in the ocean, the calm before the hellstorm. I feel multiple puffs of wind blow across my right ear, like breathing, as though someone is directly behind me, which I recognize from my last trip. This repeated experience gives me a confidence boost, but before I can compose myself for the experience to come, I am hit with a wave of mind fog. The fog has turned into a full-blown head high, like smoking way too much sativa, yet even worse, as the backdrop of the trip creeps into the high, turning it dark and anxious. I hear the sound of crawling spiders, a blend of faint plasticky clicking and soft hissing. I start to hear phantom voices as well. 45 minutes in, I feel very dizzy and have extreme difficulty concentrating on anything. I simply write DF in my live jot notes. Not sure if I missed the C key or if I try to recall the word concentrating, but couldn't, settling for focusing instead. After a couple minutes, my mind clears and I change it to DC. I feel breath across my skin again, this time across the back of my neck. It takes me a few moments to realize I'm feeling breath underneath my neck warmer. I wore it specifically to cope with the constant feeling of neck tingles. I feel chills. This is not going well. I start to feel the crawling sensation of spiders moving all across my body. Within only a couple minutes, I suddenly feel fear like none I have ever known in my entire life. Impending doom crushes down on me. I am terrified, so much that I do not even think to bring up the question of what I fear. I later recall after the trip seeing dozens and dozens of human-sized spirits and creatures, along with many spiders, all twisted and menacing, moving fast in the dimly lit room in my peripheral vision, mere feet away from where I sat. It felt as busy as an underworld street in the darkest pit of hell, crowded with vicious, angry demons just waiting to flay my mind into pieces as soon as the Benzie took full effect and hallucinations started manifesting in my direct vision. The music coming through my headphones is indecipherable, just white background noise. It no longer has any positive effect on my mental fortitude. I try to access the part of my mind where I store my stress management skills, but I can't find it in all the brain fog. I recite spiritual verses, ones that I've known for years, the same ones that guided me through my last trip with ease. They feel empty, sucked dry of meaning. I spin my eyes in circles, but the demonic spirits return as soon as my eyes stop, and I can't keep it up forever. Pure panic consumes me, the visceral, survival instincts kind of fear I've only felt when I literally blacked out from oxygen deprivation. I instinctively grab my phone and turn my LED light to the brightest, whitest setting. It feels like breaking my head above the water within seconds of drowning, but I have no energy to feel relieved, and it would be short-lived anyhow. Within moments, the raw, unhinged terror returns, like a gigantic anvil falling on my shoulders. I feel as though my horror manifests itself in my very body. My hands are shaking so bad I can barely type any jot notes. I'm feeling vertigo so strong, my eyes literally cannot focus on anything. The room is spinning like a half pendulum as my focus swings left and upward, then suddenly snaps back to straight ahead, repeating this motion 2 to 3 times every second. It's literally nauseating, so much so that I don't even have the spare focus to realize the sickening irony in that my very coping mechanisms are morphing into symptoms that intensify the fear I'm trying to handle. Complex thoughts are beyond me. An hour in. The anxiety is unbearable. I feel so exhausted, I literally cannot think to save myself. My entire body is heavy and sore. It's like I can feel the Benzie flowing through my veins, poisoning every part of my body. Breathing is difficult and painful. I am utterly void of energy, of power, and even mental. Exerting the willpower to conjure a single thought other than pure horror is like trying to lift a skyscraper with only my bare hands. All I can manage to record is, can't type. I hear the floor creaking in my room, and the fact that it's a concrete basement apartment only magnifies my reaction to it. The chair I'm sitting in starts making way too much noise. Am I unaware of my own fidgeting, or is something very large with way too many legs crawling around on the underside? The nausea is overwhelming. Everything is overwhelming, but I'm starting to feel like I may actually puke. I still have no energy, so I can't even brace myself for the trip and the new horrors I know await. I'm exhausted, sleepy, and scared. The thought of ending the trip rushes into my mind. This trip is getting grim. I look at the table and see a can of energy drink. It's risky, but I am desperate. I down what feels like a massive gulp, but in reality is a tiny sip. I feel every muscle in my mouth and throat straining to operate. Not only is the act of using any muscle a massive task, but the thought power to be aware of and feel them working drains me. Then, like a gift from the gods, every symptom starts subsiding. I take bearing of my mind, my body, my situation. I drink more, a little bit of willpower. I drink more, a little less fear. It's still mind-numbingly horrifying. My body still feels like it's being crushed by cinder blocks, and I can barely piece my thoughts together, but I am no longer paralyzed by fear. I have what feels like about a third of the can, or about 53 milligrams. I spend a great deal of time savoring this tiny fragment of solace I can get in the midst of my damnation. Finally, I take a couple more sips, gather the tattered remains of my willpower, and head out. As I leave my room and walk down the hallway to the bathroom, I see in my peripheral vision multiple grudge/ring-looking girls and a couple adult-sized ones run at me from behind. I almost don't make it to the bathroom, but thanks to a brief blackout, the distance is halved. I shut and lock the door. Inside, everything is white, and the light of midday brightens it even more. I kneel with my face in the porcelain bowl for what feels like 20 or 30 minutes. I'm seesawing between holding it down because I don't want to feel the stomach acid burning my already sore and dry throat, mouth, and nose, or gaining just a tiny fraction of my willpower back by letting go. I end up setting for the former because I need as much water and calories in my stomach as I can keep down. I feel intensely sick, both worse and different than a flu or a hangover, a cursed sickness. It takes me a while to get back up and prepare to return. When I do open the bathroom door and head back to my room, I don't feel nearly as much fear of the grudge girls, despite the unnerving and extremely vivid pitter-patter of half a dozen pairs of bare feet behind me. They're so close I can feel their breath on my neck. I feel one of them tug at the back of my shirt. After opening the floodgates of hell in my own bedroom a mere hour ago, this is a welcome change. I'm in agony. Walking, even standing, is a breathtaking, painful challenge. I climb into bed. I used up all the energy I gained in that bathroom trip. It's getting worse again. I check the stopwatch. 90 minutes. I'm a long way from peak. I finish the other 2/3 of my energy drink, taking breaks to let the nausea subside, then taking another painful gulp down my sandpaper throat. I feel the energy slowly slip away as the paralyzing exhaustion overpowers the caffeine. I try sleeping it off instead, but when I close my eyes, I see spiders, demons, and unspeakable horrors. Every second my eyes are closed, my closed-eye visuals get more and more vivid and more dark and disturbing until I open them in scared shock at the realness of it. One time I try to close my eyes and I suddenly see a gigantic demon made of rock with horns bigger than a rhino burst through my doorway, wood dust and splinters flying as it charges at me. My eyes snap open at the vivid jump scare. The dream lasted less than a second, yet it felt like I was there, like everything I saw was real and could affect me. The feeling dissipates as soon as I open my eyes. The room is getting much more sinister in the conscious world. There is no escape. The doors of hell cannot be shut so easily. I have a spread on the table with food, water, juice, and electrolytes. I try solid food, but it tastes like rubber coated in WD-40. I start sipping juice. My stomach tries to pirouette jump out of my chest, but I manage to keep it down. Each sip gets a little easier. Waves of dizziness and mind fog come and go, unending since the very beginning, and continue for the entire trip, harbingers of dark spirits that are soon to appear. A particularly intense wave hits me. I feel phantom spiders crawling all over my head. I brush at something on my ear, not sure if it is a phantom spider or hair. It's a hair. I brush it off my ear and back into place, but it sticks to my hand. I blink. The hair is gone. It wasn't real. The vividness of it scares me. I tuck my hands under the covers, but no sooner than do I feel a small patch of gluey, sticky threads on the underside of the blanket. I bring my hands back up and see a tiny splotch of white on my right thumb. I try brushing it off with my finger, but it sticks to it, stretching across both digits. It's a spider web. I'm scared shitless. It disappears in a blink, but that just scares me more. Anything is possible now. Touch, sound, vision, taste, pain. The most horrific fables, the most terrifying renditions of hell, the most unimaginable torture scenarios. They are now all within the realm of existence, and I am still not at peak. The room seems to darken, nearing the same dimness as the very beginning, despite the light being turned up as bright as I can get it. It's as if hell is swallowing up the light like a waking nightmare. Every time I breathe or fidget, I hear the sound of tiny silken spider threads snapping, like an army of spiders is gluing the back of my shirt to the pillow. It feels like it too. I feel lots of very strong, vivid tingles and jabbing pains. My silhouette on the wall next to me moves, even when I look directly at it. Despite the crushing fear and brain fog, I managed to type a final foreboding message for the experience log. In shadows now, not as planned. I need daylight. This room is no longer safe, and it's about to get much worse. I decided to take refuge in the living room. I grab my laptop and as much provisions from my table as I can carry and brace myself for the trip. I take a deep, ragged, painful breath into my sore chest and open the door. The only place not bathed in sunlight is the dining room, which is on the opposite side of the living room. Hallucinations always spawn in shadows. My bedroom door is halfway. I have a head start and I don't waste it. I rush to the living room and tug the door closed behind me, blocking off the grudge girls that I can hear running after me. I lay on the couch with the full light of day streaming in through the 12-foot wide window and prepare for what is to come. 2 hours in, I see shelves and power cords twitching and jerking like they're possessed in my peripheral vision. In my direct vision, the bare walls bulge outward in sudden popping motions. My shoes are extremely loud. I can hear every single rubber squeaking and canvas brushing sound as if I have a megaphone next to them. As soon as I lay down, I feel the crawling, tingling, stabbing spiders return as they glue my shirt to the couch. I see shadow people for the first time, even though the room is piercingly bright. I see them come and go for a while in the corner of the living room, barely more than 5 feet away from me. Then, the main attraction arrives. I'm suddenly hit, but not physically, mentally. I'm confused. I can't piece sentences together in my head. I am just rambling. Random words connect to each other like a broken autocomplete. Every few seconds I'll realize what I just thought made no sense, but as I try to understand what's happening, I'll start rambling again. Then it really hits me. My memory jumps. It's not like a blackout. It feels like a completely unbroken series of events. I feel normal under the circumstances, then suddenly I feel totally disconnected from myself. I don't know who I am. I don't recognize my body. I don't understand my own thoughts. Wait, no, I know who I am. These aren't thoughts. These are memories, emotional memories. I remember the feeling of not knowing who I am. I remember not being myself. I'm remembering what it's like to feel true delirium, and it is terrifying. I have no idea how many times I bounced between sanity and delirious disconnect, but it seemed to last only a few seconds at a time, at least the parts that I remember. What little time I had in my sane periods after recollecting all my thoughts were filled with shock and terror. I never intended to go this far. What's coming next? Is this the end of the peak or the end of me? As if by divine foresight, I managed to take the exact correct dosage for my metabolism to just peek into the maw of insanity. Within only 30 minutes, the delirium subsided. I didn't go anywhere or do anything. I'm still lying down. Thinking back on it, I doubt my body even could move, if whoever or whatever took control of my empty mind wanted it to. I was still exhausted, still battling waves of nausea, still in massive pain, and merely breathing was still a laborious task. I don't know if I could have even spoken. But before I could breathe a sigh of relief from regaining firm control of my mind, the reality of my situation came back to me. I hear the whispers of young girls, but with a sinister edge. I'm starting to hear the sounds of tiny bare feet running around behind the closed living room door. When I look at the tiny gap at the bottom of the door, I see several feet worth of pale white toes. I hear one of the grudge girls run to the opposite side of the house behind the door, then moments later run back. Then, suddenly, the sound of a saw cutting through wood. The sawing stops and the sound of metal clattering on the ground rings through my ears like a gunshot. Then I hear multiple small palms sliding across the door. They're trying to push it open. I wait in silence for the next horror. I hear more pitter-patter, then the sound of a wooden table being dragged across the floor. It's stopped right behind the door, and I see through a gap at the top of the door a tiny sliver of a head covered in long black unkempt hair just barely poking up. I look away. Suddenly, I hear the crystal clear sound of the door sliding wide open. I snap my head back. The door is closed. I hear one girl run off and return, then hear the jangling of keys and the sound of unlocking. The door remains shut. I hear several small hands scratch the door with their fingernails. I hear gentle knocking from tiny knuckles. Then, out of the cloud of indistinct murmurs, I hear a whisper call out like a cursed bell in perfect clarity. "Let me in," it taunted. Every attempt fails, but is terrifying nonetheless. They might yet get through. Anything is possible in this hellish reality. 3.5 hours in, the girls continue to run about in the apartment, creaking the door open when I'm not looking. Then, finally, it subsides. Everything subsides. I would feel relieved if I weren't so exhausted it hurt. I look at the door again and notice a massive grunge mark across the white paint. It's pale, so I wonder if I just haven't ever noticed it before. It's right at the level of the doorknob and looks like the kind of rubbed-in dirt marks that a door would get from being pushed open thousands of times. Then suddenly, it moves. It starts morphing into different shapes. I look away and look back again quickly. Now it's in a different spot. My relief from passing peek appears to be short-lived. I feel like I'm not out of the woods yet if I can see hallucinations this vivid. I try looking away, then looking at it again. Now there's 2 identical grunge marks. I reset yet again, trying vainly to purge my vision of hallucinations. It's in a new spot again. I watch it this time as it starts morphing into different shapes. It turns into a fist, then points a finger at the TV. I look over at the TV. It surfaced a semi-glossy black mirror and see a room much larger than the living room I'm in. I see the reflection of my legs and the couch and the divider wall between the living room and outside door. I also see things that aren't a reflection. I see an armchair in the non-existent space between the couch and the divider, and on the other side of the divider, I should see the door to the outside, but I only see pitch black. I look back at the chair and see a figure. He looks at me. I ask him mentally what he wants, but he walks away and disappears into the darkness on the other side of the mirrored divider. I lean over to peer through the darkness and a hallway appears. It's long, way longer than possible, with double doors and 2 windows letting daylight stream in. I lean back as I feel a sudden rush of fear of my exposed back, as well as the crawling, tingling, and jabbing intensify without my back pressed to the couch. The figure reappears suddenly, only to do the same. I don't have it in me to sit up again. I see what appears to be the reflection of my legs, except it's oriented completely wrong. Mirror me is way closer to the TV, nearly touching it, and also underneath it somehow. I see hands reach out and stretch, and the legs follow suit, stretching and bending. The illusion of reflection is lost as soon as it starts moving of its own accord. The movement is so crisp and smooth. It's the most realistic visual hallucination I have seen yet. Then suddenly, like a Rubik's Cube, patterns on my fake mirror's PJ pants slide in several directions at once as the reflection snaps back to reality. The reflection of my feet, the couch, and blanket. Then it repeats. I see the armchair figure multiple times, sometimes shape-shifting, but growing more and more indistinct every time. I hear my roommate come out of her room suddenly and start doing dishes. I can tell it's real because it's seemingly louder than the hallucinations. She turns on the dryer, then goes back to her room. Then she's out again and walks all the way to the door, pulling it open. My heart leaps into my throat. She's going to let the grunge girls out. The door doesn't move. Then I hear the bathroom sink turn on. I guess my foggy brain misheard the footsteps. I can still tell the difference between hallucination and reality if I focus. The roommate finishes up and returns to her room. More pitter-patter from the bare feet of the hallucinated girls. The roommate comes back out of her room, walking all the way to the door, and stops. Then I hear the sink turn on. It seems that when my real roommate walks around, my hallucinations hijack the sound to make themselves seem more real. I can just barely tell the difference between the fake footsteps and the real ones by how loud they are. It is only later, after reviewing my notes, that I realize a scary truth. At the time, I could barely concentrate on anything other than fighting off the unending fear, fatigue, and nausea in between bouts of head fog, so I thought nothing of it. But why my roommate would go back and forth between her room and the bathroom nearly 8 times? I was annoyed at her in the moment, but now I realize she didn't. I couldn't tell the difference between real and hallucinated sounds, not at all. 4 hours in. My mind has slowly been clearing since the peak, and I now have enough focus to try and test my typing ability. I look back at it a half an hour later and see that it is legible, and still is after looking at it 48 hours later. I notice a couple of my keyboard letters are slightly blurry, but this will pass shortly. I also notice that the lyrics of the music I am listening to get heavily jumbled and nonsensical if I turn the volume down, like my mind puts random words together when it can't hear what's being said in perfect clarity. I am truly balancing on the very edge of insanity. I break through the mental exhaustion for a moment and am sound enough mind to resume typing my notes from memory, as I remember everything in visceral detail. My laptop battery dies, so I decide to move back to my bedroom. I am still stalked by the grudge girls and the trip from the living room, which takes a lot out of my psyche. I am left exhausted, dizzy, and unable to concentrate when I arrive. I suddenly hear the sound of a man peeing loudly in the toilet, which is impossible as there are no men in my apartment, only myself and my roommate. I hear the Phantom Man finish and the distinct sound of footsteps moving towards my door, then the terrifyingly realistic sound of jingling keys, followed by the sound of a key sliding into the padlock and the bolt lock sliding open. The door remains still as I hold my breath. I hear this auditory hallucination happen repeatedly, but my exhausted, foggy brain isn't able to learn that it's fake, and every occurrence takes a little more out of my energy reserves. Sometimes when the man inevitably fails to unlock my door, he starts scraping loudly with his fingernails. I occasionally hear the sound of what seems like 100 mice in a giant swarm in the kitchen. One time, I suddenly hear the crystal clear sound of my bedroom door opening. My heart leaps into my throat as I snap my eyes to the door, but it is closed. Another time, I not only hear it opening, but see it open in my peripheral vision. I again snap my eyes directly at the door as my heart rate skyrockets, and again, the door remains locked and closed. The Phantom Man seems to be gone. When I look at my laptop to resume typing, the gap at the bottom of my door expands in my peripheral vision from an inch to several feet high. I see a gigantic spider come out of the massive black hole and crawl across the floor to my chair. When it appears on top of my chair, it is no longer a spider, but a cat. When I look directly at it, the cat disappears. I also see ghost spiders at the edges of my vision, but I cannot see any hallucinations in my direction vision anymore. My room has suddenly brightened, and I feel the darkness in my mind has lifted. After another 10 minutes, the mind fog returns. It appears it was just a valley between waves of mind fog and fatigue. My throat feels not only sore, but raw. It feels like it has been damaged badly with a caustic substance. I see the faint but full-color hallucination of a snake-like Japanese dragon in my window, wearing a humanoid Japanese demon mask. It moves slowly from the window into my room, growing more monotone as it crosses from my peripheral into my direct, where it becomes a ghost outline, and then disappears on the opposite side of my peripheral vision. I also see in my peripheral a giant spider come out of the enlarged hole in the bottom of my door, crawl to my chair, and, this time, turn into a hedgehog. A super intense wave of head fog hits me. I have difficulty maintaining a linear order of events when attempting to accomplish any task, even one as simple as forming a thought. I just now notice how sweaty I am. Earlier, near the beginning of my trip, I measured my heart rate at double my resting. It is still 60% higher than my resting rate right now. After returning from the washroom, I realize I've gone to the washroom over 10 times since the beginning. I still have no appetite. I have to force myself to eat and can still only get down liquid nutrition. I am typing notes on my laptop when suddenly, my entire field of vision jolts and blurs a little, and an entire wall of text in all caps appears instantaneously in front of me. My mind reels from the sudden time jump, and I feel a gut-wrenching, cold, clammy fear grip my chest as I read the words. I am hate. I am evil. I am cruel. I am selfish. Dozens and dozens of sentences have been written in a time of which I'm not even aware past. A screed of uncensored, unrestrained messages, like a demonic manifesto, fills my entire screen. Is this what being possessed feels like? Regardless of what is or isn't real, the writing before me is, and my memory of writing it is totally non-existent, and I am left shaken and terrified. A black ball of spidery legs rushes across the floor incredibly quick. All of my visual hallucinations have been subsiding over the last few hours. It has been almost 5 hours since the end of my peak, so I expect that the trip is nearly over. Suddenly, I'm starting to see specks and glitches. I feel a rush of anxiety, hear hallucinated voices, and the light in my bedroom grows brighter. Am I starting a second trip? I can't possibly have redosed. I have remembered nearly everything in my trip so far in perfect clarity, and even in the remote chance that I do have memory blackouts, it takes nearly half an hour to gather all the supplies needed, fill capsules with benzene concentrate, and measure the amount. Not to mention that I have absolutely no desire to keep this nightmare going any longer. My chest pounds at the thought of things ramping up again, regardless of how remote it seems. My vision blurs and jolts again at the discombobulating feeling of another time jump, though again I have not moved. It appears I was possessed only for a fraction of a second this time, as whatever evil taking over me had only enough time to enter a line break. I am most definitely having another trip. All of the mental and emotional effects are intensifying, much more than they should be 5 hours post-peak. It has been about 7 hours since I had caffeine, so it must be wearing off, allowing the benzene to surge back to full strength. I contemplate having more, but I don't want to strain my heart any more than it already is, so I choose to simply ride it out. My bedroom turns dark and foreboding, so I decide to take refuge in the living room once again. I see a translucent, drifting thread in the corner of my eyelashes, a single thread of spiderweb, and pull it off with my fingers. I feel nothing, and the hallucination vanishes. The furniture starts to creak much too loudly and often. I've left the door to the living room open, and I hear the distinct noise of someone walking around in bare feet. She sniffs her nose like it's runny, dumps a tiny amount of water into the sink drain, and starts to walk toward the door. Fear grips my chest like a vice. The roommate hasn't returned yet. I'm still alone in the apartment, or at least I should be. I rush to the door and swing it shut, ignoring the glimpses of figures down the hallway. I start to feel the familiar sensation of a cold phantom wind blowing across each and every finger individually. All of my hairs are standing on end. I'm hearing lots of auditory hallucinations and seeing visuals in my peripheral. Above me, I see a vivid double of the light fixture, but when I turn my eyes up to look at the ceiling, it's gone. My ears are ringing, a deafeningly piercing high-pitched whine, just like last time before my first peek. I hear the sound of a table or a stool scraping across the kitchen floor, coming towards the door. Instead of stopping though, it turns around and goes back to the kitchen, then starts going around in circles. My mind must have been getting extremely foggy as I hear the circular dragging seem to move vertically and over me to the ceiling, yet don't question the realness of it at the time. I feel breathing across my ear again. I feel tingling all over my body and a sudden bad taste in my mouth. The head fog, nausea, and dizziness return extremely strongly. I hear what sounds like a body falling on the floor on the other side of the wall, and the table shakes a little in the corner of my eye. I hear quiet knocking at the living room door. The lyrics to the music I am listening to are getting jumbled again. My chest is in extreme pain again, and breathing becomes very difficult. My mouth and throat are horribly dry. A wave of anxiety hits me like a train. I hear my neighbor outside yell angrily and a car alarm go off, as though he caught a robber trying to steal his car. Was it real? Pretty sure not, but there's no way to know for sure. I'm in a valley between the waves of effects. I instinctively want this calm to last, but I know it will not. In fact, whenever I become aware that I am in a valley, it's usually a sign that it is going to get much worse very soon. I look at the shadow of my own hand against the back of the couch and feel something strange. It is as if I don't recognize the shadow as my own. It feels nearly exactly the same as when I had a moment of temporary prosopagnosia when drinking absinthe and couldn't recognize my own reflection as my face. The ear ringing is getting louder with each wave. Am I feeling time dilation or just near delirious confusion? I notice I'm making very odd movements with my hands, like a nervous tic that I've developed just now. 11 hours in, I hear extremely believable knocking on the outside door. 2 firm knocks, as if with the metal top of a cane, repeated 6 or 7 times. It's the loudest, clearest, and most believable of all the auditory hallucinations I've had so far. It can't possibly be real. That door faces the backyard. The only people who would enter there are the landlords, and they always call before entering, yet I cannot stop believing it is real. I hold very still and pretend I'm not at home, despite the living room light being on. After a while, I hear the sound of the entryway landing creaking behind the divider that stands between me and the outside door, as though someone is walking in. The creaking stops just behind the edge of the divider wall. I feel as though a dark, regal spirit is waiting for me to invite them in. I don't know whether to get up and do so, unleashing who knows what kind of malice into my house, or to refuse and risk the consequences. I decide it's better to not invite unknown spirits into my home. After another period, I hear the sound of the base of a cane angrily striking the sidewalk outside my door, then clacking footsteps walking swiftly away. Have I brought a worse fate upon myself for being rude? I feel it's better to stick with the evil I know, but perhaps there is no good choice. I hear another hallucination, above me. The old man's stroller drags loudly across the floor, and the sharp sound of high heels follows behind. It must be real. It is too loud to be a hallucination, yet I've never heard anyone with high heels visit the tenants upstairs. Then, it starts moving backwards, the 2 phantoms retracing their steps, then behind me, then diagonally down one wall, then down another until at ground level. Another pause between waves. All of the symptoms start to subside, and I gather my things and return to my bedroom, as my laptop is almost out of battery again. In my room, I am able to turn I have vivid bouts of auditory hallucinations and visuals in my peripheral throughout editing, and even now I know if I let my eyes sit in one spot too long, I'll start seeing things more vividly until I see it in my direct vision. My eyes are starting to hurt. I feel a migraine coming. I'm ready to fall asleep. I turn my computer off, then turn off the lights. I immediately hear the sound of a soft thud and a small mouth inhale, like a child jumping. I sense a grudge girl right next to my bed, inches from my face. I turn the lights back on. I feel nauseous. My stomach gurgles, faint at first, then growling louder. It keeps growling, way too many times. Is it a hallucination, or to be expected after ingesting a toxic amount of chemicals and then not eating for an entire day? I have no way of knowing what is or isn't real when it comes to sounds, and I am most definitely still not of sound mind. As I type this, I can see a plastic Easter Island head statue standing impossibly sideways on the side of my desk that disappears when I look straight at it and reappears when I resume typing. I hear the faint sound of a massive hellhound breathing in its sleep under my bed. I finish typing, just about to get ready to fall asleep, when suddenly I hear a familiar, foreboding sound, a deafening, high-pitched whine. The third peak is coming. I turn off my computer again and try to quickly fall asleep before I can start seeing, hearing, and feeling things. The first hour I can only fall asleep for 5 minutes at a time. I'm still seeing vivid CEVs, though not nearly as bad as during the first come-up. It always starts in a place that feels small and cramped, like a movie short happening on a tiny set, and it always ends up returning to the same pattern, rushing at 200 miles per hour through a long, winding, unending tunnel. The dream keeps getting more real, dark, and sinister until I'm shocked awake. One time I close my eyes and I see a magician. He opens a red curtain, just barely big enough for me to walk through. I see dozens of curtains opening up inside, one after the other, each one darker as the light fades into the distance. I'm rushing through them. Now it's not just the shadows making the curtains darker. The fabric itself on each consecutive curtain is a deeper red than the previous one, until they're all black now, and they start to get more and more vivid. I am only in the curtain tunnel for a couple seconds before I rush to a tiny black tent. The magician is there. The room is lit dimly as if from only a few candles, even though I can't see the source of the light. Someone is tied up in a chair with a plastic mask that has 3 holes, one for each eye and a third in their forehead. The magician grabs a giant razor-sharp knitting needle and stabs it into their head through skin and bone. I start to feel a sudden stabbing pain in my own head, which makes me jump awake. The dream felt like it lasted less than a minute. Another dream, and I am in a tiny dimly lit room again, with old-fashioned light bulbs on a wire lining the top edge of 2 of the walls. The low ceiling is a thick, opaque tarp and blows in the strong wind outside. I feel like we must be near the seaside. It's nighttime. There's a person standing next to a small table. There's only standing room between the edges of the table and the walls. They're checking the light bulbs. They bend over towards the table, and suddenly everything starts spinning, like full vision, full color tracers. My entire world is a circular pattern, then suddenly I am rushing through it as it turns into a tunnel. The tunnel is striped, black and gray, and I'm falling at breakneck speed, though I don't feel any vertigo. The walls start to gradually become more clear until they're glass, with black metal between each pane. Outside, I see I am underwater. It's getting darker as I fall deeper and deeper until there's only pitch black. Suddenly, the tunnel is no longer made of glass. It's made of skulls. I'm rushing through the open maw of a million giant consecutive skulls. Outside the skull tunnel, I see a deep red glow get brighter and brighter as I rush down the tunnel into hell. I jump awake. Again, the dream only lasted a couple minutes. Another dream, and I am looking at the sidewalk in the city. I know it's daytime and that there's a bustling city around me, but I can't see anything except this tiny 10-foot square space of the sidewalk. There's half of a public bench sticking into the scene. The other half exists out of frame. Under the shadow of the bench on the concrete is a bunch of tiny baby chickens for some reason. They are gray instead of yellow. Suddenly, a large dog rushes into the scene, devouring the small birds in a gruesome, bloody mess. It finishes its gory meal in only a few bites and looks up at me. Its head is flat and it has no eyes, and then I realize it has 2 bottom jaws instead of a top and bottom one. Its head is just a giant mouth. It's no regular dog, it's a hellhound. It sniffs me, then opens its maw wide and jumps at me, and I see a long dark tunnel lined with teeth before jumping awake. Every time I wake up, my heart is racing, and I start to hear the ringing in my ears, followed by crawling, tingling sensations and movements in my peripheral vision. I try to get back to sleep before the fear can keep me awake. After a restless hour of 5-minute naps, I start to have longer dreams, and as a result, sleep for longer periods. 10 minutes, then 15, then 30. As the dawn starts to light up my room through the window, I feel safer closing my eyes, and the light seems to cast a calming mood over my dreams. I wake up 3 hours later feeling almost sober and a little bit rested for the first time in what feels like eternity. It's daylight again. I check the time on my phone. I try to close my blinds to sleep better, but still feel the cold, clammy grip of benzophere grip me in the dark, so I turn it up again, then return to sleeping. The periods of rest between waking gradually increase over the next few hours and feel more restful. 4 hours later, I wake up and decide to stay up this time, feeling fine. My mouth tastes like chalky, acidic chemicals. I warm up some solid food and pour hot sauce on it to burn out the terrible taste. I feel my throat burning like I've just downed a small spoon of bleach, still raw from the benzie. I keep eating and it gradually burns less. I don't feel any nausea. I hear a loud bump and a metallic clatter in the kitchen, like pop cans or spray cans, I can't tell. My heart leaps at the noise, still jumpy. Was it real though? Am I still hearing things that vividly? I check my table and find a hair that hours ago I wasn't sure was real. It seems my vision is clear. I hear the distant and faint sound of the microwave warming food. Then I think I hear it beeping the finished sound while still running. That's not right. The beeping seems to fade as if my understanding that it's an illusion causes it to. Then I realize I've never been able to hear the low hum of the microwave warming food from my bedroom. It's the other way around. The beeping was real. Or was any of it real? I hear another loud thud, another metallic clatter in the kitchen. I glance at the edge of the bed and something catches my eye. The black sheet has a ghost outline against the white wall, a classic Benzie illusion. I am still seeing things. I close my blinds. In the pitch black, I start to see indistinct shapes like partial illusions and tiny sudden movements at the very distant corners of my vision. I hear the microwave beeping again and go investigate, testing my reality for the first time. It's real. The roommate was warming food. I resume typing. With my light dimmed to a deep dark red, I can clearly tell now that I'm definitely still seeing things in the corner of my eyes, albeit faint and distinct. In areas of pitch black shadows, I see the blackness morph and spider-like legs reach out just a couple of inches. In bright areas, I see small, super faint ghost spiders dash about. I resume editing my notes. I'm hearing the high-pitched ringing again. I know the hallucinations aren't coming back, so it's no longer terrifying, but still loud and slightly painful now. Was it always painful? Probably, but I was in a constant state of agony during the trip, from physical pain, extreme exhaustion, soreness, and nausea, so I probably didn't notice something so mild. I also seem to still have difficulty seeing things for what they are when I have music playing. After writing a few paragraphs, I'll notice several bright red underlines appear, all at once, typos that I didn't see at first. It is now 52 hours and 30 minutes in, and I finished the trip report. I still see the slight hint of moving things at the edge of my vision, the occasional leg of a ghost spider, and I have the uncanny sensation that I can feel the darkness of shadows, like the contrast of my vision is up just slightly. Even the pupils of my eyes, though they are of regular size, they look blacker than I remember, and I feel just a little tinge of anxiety looking at them, even in the bright light. Benzie is potentiated by darkness, so it must be a residual effect. Benzitamine is unlike any other deliriant. It's not like DPH, it's not like tropane alkaloids, antihistamines, or Z-drugs. There is no mental or emotional anesthetic during a Benzie trip to soothe the horror. Every feeling is in fact amplified. The impending doom, crushing despair, and literally paralyzing anxiety only increases with the dose. Benzie also plays one's own fears against themselves. My mind was constantly racing through dozens of fears, monsters, and scenarios, creating new ones every minute during the entire trip. Trying not to focus on them is like trying to walk across a disturbed anthill without stepping on a single ant. All it takes is pausing on a single dark thought for 1 second too long, and it starts to creep into the physical world. Caffeine is an extremely effective Benzie suppressant, but will magnify the stress on the heart. The visual hallucinations would often sync with real sounds, while the auditory hallucinations would meld, play off, or mimic real sounds happening in the moment, making the latter impossible to tell apart. I don't even bother drinking plain water, it has no effect. Coconut water, sports drinks, and/or electrolytes are essential for staying hydrated. To say that frequent urination is an effect of Benzie would be an understatement. My liver was clearly desperately trying to purge my body of poison. I lost a massive amount of liquid that I couldn't possibly keep up with, and with my sore throat, mind fog, and time dilation, even taking small sips was a significant undertaking. I'm still replenishing my body liquids now. Benzie greatly inhibits alcohol. I only drink once or twice a year and can be prone to blacking out. On the night after the end of the trip, I went out and had a lot to drink with friends, far more than I should have been able to handle, and both felt very aware and suffered no impairment to my vision. As a final note, I cannot possibly fit everything I saw, felt, and heard during every minute of my experience into this already massive trip report. I experienced so much that, despite having only a few short memory blanks, I simply couldn't fit everything into my memory. Even now, I'm having things come back to me, details that were overwhelmed in the moment by the pain, exhaustion, and fear. I have a clear memory of an unbroken linear series of events, but there are several times when a single sense or emotion was so strong that I cannot recall what else was going on. I read a lot about people huffing petrol products, dust-off, varnish remover, and other solvents. It seems that the majority of these people report bad experiences. I can't speak about these, however, as a regular huffer of liquid butane, petrol lighter refills. I can only report good experiences, but the resulting damage of a 5-year abuse is now painfully apparent to me. I started huffing having never previously taken drugs of any kind. I didn't even smoke regulars back then. I happened to fall in with the crowd of huffers, although for a long time I resisted the temptation. I finally gave in after an argument with my parents in which I had walked out and was determined to do anything to avoid going back home that night. My first huff started that day. I was only 17. The first few huffs taste strange, but leave a warm glowing feeling inside, like the warm glow I get after a few whiskeys. This comes on always within the first minute and feels good. Fingers start to tingle, and generally the experience is a lot like the pleasant onset of drunkenness. The next few huffs feel vaguely sexual. My whole body seems to hum and buzz, and every breath brings a feeling to my chest like the nervousness of being with someone I love when I feel it is time to tell them how I feel. A delightfully giddy excitement, and my breathing feels shallow at times, and I feel the need to concentrate on my breathing. A slight paranoia about the stupidity of what I am doing often accompanies this but soon disappears. For a while, I rest in this state, breathing normally and feeling quite comfortable. I wait until any developing paranoia leaves me and I am ready to continue. I feel warm and glowing, relaxed and happy. The room seems a little different, but I couldn't explain how, and sometimes little lights seem to flicker in my peripheral vision, like those I get when tired, nothing spectacular. The next few deep huffs after this state inevitably bring an audio effect which can only be described as a sort of ambient juice harp or some kind of spring, a boingy-wahi sound that comes from nowhere in particular and seems to permeate everything. Sudden noises or speaking make it stop, only for it to creep back again. My voice seems a little strange, as do the voices of others with me. We try not to talk. Strange lights play around the edges of objects, and everything seems less real and take on an almost dreamlike quality that is hard to convey. A few more huffs and there is a very rapid change in my perception, like some perceptual cog slipping into, or more likely out of, place. It happens so cleanly and suddenly that I can almost point to it. Suddenly I notice the wooden floor is made of wooden jigsaw pieces, and this seems normal. I smile. The room now seems so different that I cannot tell you whose room it is or where it happens to be. It seems to exist on its own. It is all that exists. I cannot visualize anything beyond what I immediately see. A few more huffs and the whole open-eye hallucination clicks into place, and everything becomes different. The trips are often very similar in nature. At least, people in rooms always change consistently, so I will explain the most common features that I see at this point. One of my regular huffing companions changes into a ragdoll. He has yellow wool hair, and I can see every twisted strand clearly. The more I try to see past the illusion, the more perfect the illusion becomes, until normal vision is absolutely impossible. My other friend turns into the girl from a well-known television test card that the BBC used to use. This ties in with the ragdoll, who is also from the same test card image. The back of their sofa is suddenly made of dark-colored oversized jigsaw pieces stacked on their sides of the wall. Some of these have fallen forwards and piled up to make the seat of the sofa. Detail is amazing, and again, I cannot, however hard I try, see past the illusion. On this occasion, I am wearing a fluffy white jumper with a gray band across the middle that I got for Christmas. It makes me feel furry and friendly, and I suddenly realize that I am in fact an Old English sheepdog. I can't see myself, I just know. I laugh a kind of breathy dog laugh because I realize that I am not actually allowed on the sofa. They haven't noticed this and allow me to remain. The table has become a stack of 4 oversized children's alphabet blocks, and suddenly, I do not recognize any feature of the room, although I feel at home here. Looking at the television, I am struck with the sudden realization that everything has been reversed, that we are inside the television and a normal world lies beyond through that opening of light. We are the test card. I smile. Huffing again, nothing further happens except that I prolong the state. It is complete, and no amount of huffing seems to change things. Looking at the fire, I see a light show in the distance and fancy that it's a vast arena where a band is playing. I can hear the band and the crowd, although later I realized it was on the tape we were playing during the Huff, a live version of a techno classic. I am enthralled and want to see more, but I am aware that I am too large to get in, and that, also, I am a dog. I bark. They look at me. I look at them. I look at the television. I scratch my ear. I look back at them. They look at the television. It all seems so natural, and I know that many of you will believe that I'm making this up, but the truth is that my head is so full of toxins that almost anything is possible at this point. The fact that it seems so real and natural is, I believe, what makes this a frequently reoccurring reality. But it feels so real in that moment, I could swear that my eyes have been opened to a greater and more true reality. One time, I went to retrieve some cigarettes from the fireside opposite me. My feet were moving awkwardly, and I looked down to notice that they could not step on the joins in the jigsaw floor. Not only this, but the tile under my foot seemed to rise up to meet me with each step, barely perceptible, just an inch or so. By the middle of the room, the tiles are rising about 2 feet, and I try to put my foot down through the gap to touch the floor below, but I physically cannot. The tile below my foot comes to meet me, and the other one falls away. By the time I reach the fireplace, I seem to be about 40 feet in the air and rising all the time. I could see the room far below and air whistles around my head. Turned out later that the kitchen window was open. Looking forwards, I see the fireplace in front of me and finally locate my cigarettes, which had changed pack color. They were actually someone else's, and finally got back to the sofa. Sitting on the sofa, I can see the fireplace opposite me and at the same level as myself. I laugh and then feel self-conscious. I sit and watch the others for a while and get bored. A few more huffs and I pass out stunningly, seeing the white bag wrapped around my O-shaped hand coming up to my face like a funnel. I inhale deeply. Again, it comes to my face, and again, and again, and again. Very fast like a trail, except that I feel each funnel hitting the last. I feel their impact through my hand and lips until suddenly I fly backwards and into a bigger funnel behind me, and the chain of funnels takes me down into another alternate reality. A butane dream. I am unconscious. This is where vivid closed-eye hallucinations begin. Tunes repeat endlessly and sometimes mockingly, and I feel I am trapped inside some vast arcade game. Everything is colorful and perfectly vivid. Things revolve around simple rules here, although I am not always sure of what those rules are. Something keeps flying past me, picking up parts of the scenery as it goes, and I am jumping over blocks to avoid it. A floating orange figure called Wordy, who is a hemisphere with black arms and no body, hovers in front of me. Wordy watches word watchers. Hello, word watchers watching, he says. Somewhere, a crowd of children say, hello, Wordy, in unison. A dark thing called the onus is bouncing around with the sound of an unceasing Jewish harp, and a springy chorus of words sang a song about catching the onus and repeating tunes and words. It is altogether quite beautiful. I race around the corridors and passages, sometimes being chased, sometimes chasing Wordy. There seems to be something I am supposed to be doing, but I don't know what it is. All I know is that I have a purpose in all of this. I belong here. I have some vital role. Suddenly, the black onus thing comes up behind me and I become part of that blackness. The song is all that exists, but now I hear it muffled like I am floating inside something much bigger than myself. I hear and feel a loud pop that seems to come from inside my own head, and suddenly I am back in the room and things are returned almost back to normal. Total duration was about an hour and a half. For most of that time I was asleep, but it seems like much longer. Later, as the effects wear off, I will feel a little nauseous and be unable to look at food. The rest of the day I feel disconnected and slow, like a hangover. I cannot think of anything except the most simple things. The rest of the second day I find it hard to concentrate. An interesting point to note is that items in my dream change predictably. Maybe it is so real and overpowering that it is hard to hallucinate anything else once having had one major trip in those surroundings. Moving to different surroundings often creates a different trip, although people often carry their characters with them. Whenever I wear white now, I am an Old English sheepdog, and my dark-haired friend is almost always a yellow-haired ragdoll in any environment. Such is the power of these illusions on my psyche. Long-term side effects. We used to take butane by bag or rolled handkerchief, and occasionally the compressed gas refill about once a month. And after a year, I didn't feel any lessening of my abilities in real life or any loss of vividness in my high state. Nevertheless, I changed to just doing it about once every 2 months, and after 5 years of regular abuse, I started to notice acute short and long-term memory deficits and large gaps appearing in my past where I couldn't remember anything. Items I had once and can't remember where they went, whether they broke or were sold. Places where I used to live I can no longer find or remember the area. Sometimes walking home on a familiar route, I pause at a corner unsure of which way to go. For a few minutes, both ways seemed wrong and I couldn't choose. Only once I became so confused about the direction home that I just stopped and cried. I thought I was losing my mind. A lady stopped and asked me what was wrong, and I had to tell her I'd forgotten where I lived. She seemed a little puzzled why a man of my age would cry about such a thing. I was 22, and she just assumed I was new to the area. I'd actually lived there 6 years. I told her the street name and she looked it up in the A to Z in her car, and you know what? I was actually standing at the junction at the end of my own street. I felt so stupid as I walked down the street hoping that I would find something about it that I recognized, but nothing until I actually got to my front door. I recognized that, but not the street. Many years have passed since then, and I have not touched butane since. The smell now makes me feel sick, and my short and long-term memory is improving and my cognitive skills are back to normal, I believe. But there are still large clouds over my memories of times before I did butane. I am now 29 and have a child. I take occasional ecstasy now and find it has none of the problems of my previous inhalants and enhances my feeling of reality and belonging without distorting it. I consider these trips to be better than the random trips I have had from LSD and also way superior to Nitrous, but not if I stop at the warm fuzzy feeling. I have to drive through to the perceptual change and open eye hallucination, and possibly even until I get sleepy and pass out and have the amazingly vivid butane dreams. Otherwise, it's no better an experience than drinking spirit alcohol. I wouldn't change my experiences for anything. I have been places and experienced things that no other man has experienced, and in this respect, it is worthwhile, rather like climbing a mountain or trekking to the North Pole. I have been a dog, visited what were essentially alternate universes, lived inside a TV, floated over bizarre perfect landscapes and met some very interesting characters, many of whom I still have vivid memory of, and still more that I have forgotten completely. If I could change anything, I would have used it just a few times and then stopped before I became damaged, as it is certainly taking a long time to recover all my mental faculties.
Today is currently day 267 after Datura, and I'm still not free from its hands. I never will be, as Datura has transformed from simply a trip to many permanent delusions and side effects of early onset schizophrenia. It starts a few months earlier, in December of 2024, when exploring with some friends at the creek, I found a singular pod on its stem lying detached, far from its mother plant. I instantly recognized it as what it was, Datura, exactly what I had heard the horrific trip reports about. I knew I couldn't just pass it by, so I carefully picked it up, took a quick picture, and gently put it in my bed, making sure the seeds stayed inside the pod. That night when I returned home, I took out the pod and carefully plucked the seeds from their spots and put them into a small plastic container. I then did the same with any seeds left in my bag. For around a month, I'd completely forgotten about it. It sat tucked away underneath paint palettes in fear of being discovered. January 19th, 2025. I knew I was in for something, just not how grand it would be, so I chose a long weekend to take it. Saturday morning, I had taken 5 to 10 seeds with very minimal but noticeable effects, but I wanted more. Around 8 p.m., I had taken some edibles, about 50 to 60 milligrams, a small dose for me. It still wasn't enough. Some part of me deep down craved the chaos I knew more would bring, an insatiable urge. Then, around 9 p.m., I scarfed down exactly 175 seeds. They were bitter, and I had to keep taking breaks to drink water. By 50, the cotton mouth was unbearable. It felt as though every fiber of an actual cotton ball was clawing at the back of my throat, but I pressed on. By the end, my mouth was dry and my water was empty. All I had left to do was wait. By the time I noticed anything, it was 11:02 p.m. It was at this point that I began to have issues seeing clearly and reading, as everything was in motion. I got up from my bed and made my way over to my desk to take off my makeup. When I turned on the lamp, it hurt my eyes way more than usual, and I immediately ducked my head and began to squint blink while slowly looking back up. I finally managed to open my eyes fully, and when I looked into the mirror, I saw to my dismay that my pupils were completely blown. It startled me, and I jumped backward in my chair, scaring myself more as the chair creaked when I jumped. I began to wobble my way back to bed, as at this point my coordination was also very off. I climbed into bed and grabbed my stuffed animals. I checked my phone one final time, the numbers blurry and wiggling. 11:05. Only 3 minutes had passed? What the fuck? I thought to myself as I gently put my phone down, trembling as I did. I remember feeling like I was the exact concept of reality. Everything looked so flat despite warping around my vision's focal point. I closed my eyes and began to see colors and patterns, like millions of tiny dots making up a big, beautiful picture, like sand flowing in the wind. The colors were unlike anything I had ever seen, and eventually I began to fade into a separate space, a space inside my mind, like I had taken a step back into myself. This is when the trip really began. I could suddenly feel my physical body wither away into dust, leaving only my metaphysical body. A thin and clear plasma membrane with dust strings of blue and yellow energy dancing around inside of me. A string with a splattered aura and gentle glow began to wrap itself inside my chest, going through me horizontally but pulling me in every direction. It was only me and the things I had come to see within myself in that space. I began to feel myself being thrust forward and backward with no particular rhythm, sometimes jolted upwards or downwards with vigor. My body was being thrust through a tunnel of mere consciousness and life, a huge tunnel of colored fractals and 4D shapes moving together like cogs with the ever-tugging string until you eventually reach the dark, empty abyss that looms at the end of the tunnel, its presence making you feel uneasy. By this point, the tunnel is barren of any fractals or expressions. It's just a deep, muted red with a sort of unnatural skin texture. As I looked deeper into the darkness ahead, I began to realize that nothing existed beyond it. I could feel inside my chest that no matter existed there. It was truly empty. I began to feel the string tighten around my heart and came to the sickening realization that beyond the wall was death, the very concept of ceasing to exist entirely. The string, however, did not slow down. I was rapidly being thrown towards the darkness, jolted violently, the string continuing to tighten around my heart. I curled up into the fetal position and looked into my hands. In my palm sat a small ball of pure energy, life, love, and individuality. I could see the edges slowly begin to wither away and the glow gradually get fainter. I could feel my heart begin to slow as I shut my eyes, accepting what was to come despite being petrified. I had to accept in an instant that I was going to die, and I never got to say goodbye. I never got to accomplish all I wanted, and that I would never see anyone I loved again. I held on tightly to my soul and had a final rush of peace. I began to see everything I was and what I had become. I suddenly jerked still. My heart skipped a beat as I opened my eyes and opened my body. I looked to see myself face to face with an empty void of nothing. My arm was practically grazing the pitch black. My soul began to fill again as my heart began to beat and my body began to glow once more. I felt an overwhelming sense of appreciation, gratitude, and love wash over me as I could tell I was being given a second chance to live. I knew then that I had to make my life as meaningful and beautiful as possible, to live my purpose and show love to everyone. I closed my eyes inside my mind and suddenly jerked upwards, my eyes wide open and breathing rapidly. That's when I blacked out. The next thing I remember, I was in the car with my friend, whom I'll call P, and we were driving through the redwoods to a national park, with my family in a separate car behind us. It was now Monday the 20th at around noon. I begin talking to him about Tool, my favorite band, and my favorite songs of theirs. However, I'm having trouble getting anything out, as I feel almost paralyzed in my own body. I keep stuttering and mixing up my words like saying favorite instead of my favorite. It was hard to keep my attention on anything, and my vision was still so blurry up close. I had completely forgotten that I had taken Datura while simply just enjoying the silly hallucinations of colors and warping planes of life with my friend, until he started laughing at a picture he had taken of me earlier in the drive. I looked at the picture, and I was just staring out the window, eyes wide with the straw just far enough away from my lips to look odd, still as a statue. I just kinda stared at the picture, wondering what the hell had just happened. At that point, I remembered I had taken Datura and became very concerned. I started to realize that I knew what I had done to get where I was, but I didn't remember actually doing it. I know I got up early to get ready because I had a full face of makeup on, fully dressed, hair done, and was about 45 minutes from home by the time I became lucid again. I was so confused and just stared out the window for a bit. I started to see little shapes and a figure moving throughout the grass. Not quite a shadow figure though, more like a 2D figure of pitch black triangles and reflecting shapes folding each angle in patterns to move across the horizon line. It was probably around 7 to 8 feet tall and moved quite fast. I started thinking about what animal it could have been and tried to point it out to P, but after turning my head away, I lost it. By the time I'm lucid again, only around 20 minutes have gone by, and we've pulled up to a gas station. P signals for me to get out with him, and I slowly and shakably get out of the car. I'm wobbling and moving extremely slowly, dragging my feet along the ground as we walk in. P is helping me walk and giggling with me the whole time. By now, I am completely delirious, and I black out once again. According to my friend, I was just acting pretty stoned, which he assumed I was since I'm a heavy cannabis user. Another day passes unremembered, and it's now January 21st, and I'm walking into my English class, only to glance up on my way in and see my friends looking at me and smiling. For some reason, I became very, very scared. My heart started racing and my eyes became wider as I just stopped and stared at them for a moment. I remember thinking they had known what I did and were secretly out to get me for it, so I bolted to my seat. However, on the way, I slightly trip over a cord, then proceed to stare at the cord for who knows how long, before asking my other friend if the cord is real in a shaky voice while scooting over my desk on my ass. I sit down, get out my pencil, and go on my phone for a bit. Suddenly, I'm standing next to my friend's desk from earlier, on the very opposite side of the classroom. They begin to laugh as I look at them, extremely puzzled. I asked them what was going on, and they said that I just came up to them and started talking about how much fun I was having. And when they tried to ask me what I was talking about, I just kind of stared at them and then asked what was going on. It was around this point that I again remembered I had taken Datura. I leaned into my friend's ear and told them what was happening, and they said they knew. I was super confused and asked how they knew, and they told me to check my Instagram. I opened up my Instagram to see that I had posted copious amounts of shit on my story, my second private account being the worst. I looked through each story, and the first one was a collage I had seemingly made, with the center picture being of my eyes. I was taken aback as my pupils now took up about 85% of my iris. I quickly opened the camera and examined my face. The first thing I saw was how wide open my eyes were, almost as if they were being pried open by some pair of invisible clamps. Then I noticed my pupils. They were bigger than I'd ever seen them. However, this didn't alarm me in any way, and I gently put my phone back in my pocket and joined in on the conversation again. I watched as the two friends' heads turned into spiraling colors, like those coloring apps where each section is its own color, except the colors are swirling and twisting like smoke in the sunlight. I began to feel as if my mind had taken a seat in the back and I was being pulled away. The edges of my vision started to look like the sides of a Polaroid, and a small gray control panel similar to the one in Inside Out began to appear in front of me. Suddenly, I was inside my head. I was sitting at the back of my mind, watching as my brain stopped for a moment, as the people in my vision stopped moving. I closed my eyes inside my head, and I was gone again. And that is all I remember. Out of 14 days, I only remember 3 distinct segments. I've heard stories of what I would do during that time, like walk on invisible tightropes everywhere, close my eyes and try to find the walls of a room since I had zero spatial awareness, and ramble incoherently for hours on end. However, the horror does not come from the trip itself, but from the effects it had on my mind. Sometime during or immediately after the trip, I experienced my second psychotic break, the first happening 4 years prior in 2021, which I had been treated for previously, but not looked at closely enough. For reference, psychotic symptoms began to present themselves in me at age 8 in 2016 with hallucinations, paranoia, and severe night terrors, which never truly went away. Present time, the most recent break lasted around 6 months, starting in January, peaking in late March to early April, and ending around late June. This is where the true devastation begins. I was completely and utterly delusional. My biggest delusion, however, was that I believed around me existed a bubble, and this bubble was the entire universe, like how the world in VR is simply a bubble of flat 2D color around you. I believed I was a multi-dimensional being that was destined to exist in the true universe outside the bubble of the universe I'd come to know. All I had to do was rip through the bubble, and I'd be free into the truth, into the Datura world. This led me not only to go out and search for more Datura in hopes of unlocking eternity, but for the first time in my life, I truly wanted to die. Not because I hated myself or because I didn't want to live, but because death was the only release of my soul into the true universe. The world we live in was a facade. The true world lies beyond our mere 3D fabric of life. Death was the only escape. I didn't want to be trapped in falsities, so I craved death. I wanted to die because I wanted to live. I am lucky I never got to act on that belief. I truly believe there's no better way to explain delusion than writing it out while it happens. However, most are completely incomprehensible, so I'll share the more sensible ones. February 4th, 2025. Everything in the previous universe I knew before all made sense at once, and I could understand every concept, thought, idea, every particle of existence. I could simultaneously understand and experience through myself. I am out of place now. I am in the wrong universe, the wrong plane of existence, like a 3D figure in a 2D world. All I need to do is rip through the fabric of this small, confining reality to make it back to mine, which has no shape and is never ending, no form, yet more faces than numerical values. February 12th, 2025. I am the only truth. I cannot see a future. It's muddy. Nothing to be passed. What does it matter if I move my pen now? Nothing in my destiny aligns with any part of this fabricated reality, simply meant to distract me from my destiny lying deep within the fabric of the universe, rip open to be freed. Will you continue after I leave? I do not know, for if you do, I leave my mark upon the world in which you will remember the absence of the first soul to break through to the true consciousness and universe. February 24th, 2025. I wonder if what must come of my life is up to the pedestal the falseness creates. In the eyes of truth, this world is merely a distraction, nothing more than a blindfold placed upon a soul in order to test the strength needed to live fully. I still don't know whether there are other souls here, either disguised as mine was, or truly I am stuck in an unrendered plane, flat with lies. How many advances have passed while I've been away? I do not want to use I. I am not I. I do not know what I am, but I am not I. How else am I to address how I believe I am? So astonishing to me that a world so intricate and complex can be a mere facade. Think of how grand the truth must be. Send to the beings beyond. How must I get them to hear my cries? Hear me beg and hear me plead. Allow me in. Grant me to eternity. After months of living in an almost completely detached and dissociated state, I was sitting in my psychology class one day where our unit project was due and a new unit would begin. I did not have anything to turn in for the unit, as the project was to create our own inside-out islands with aspects of our personality, but I had no idea who I was, so I was unable to even start. That day was also the beginning of the newest unit, the disorder unit, where we were given a packet of fill-in type notes with the general groups and information about the more common disorders. In this packet was a section on psychotic disorders with the big bold word schizophrenia for all to see. In that moment, for the first time in months, something in my mind clicked and began to realize how far it had actually gotten. After class that day, I cried to her, with my words being jumbled and rambled. One sentence managed to escape coherently. I don't know who I am. It was that day I realized I needed help, and I got that help shortly afterwards. Many therapists, doctors, diagnoses, and medication changes later, and I am no longer in a state of psychosis. However, I am still schizophrenic, but I am finding ways to embrace it. Honestly, I would stay away completely, as my brain will never recover from the damage it caused.